Okay guys, we got this Caravan here with the alternator that's pooched. It's dead short. I talked about it a little bit in a video and then said, you know, hey, the replacement's pretty easy to get to. It's pretty straightforward. I forgot that there were a couple little minor things that can throw you off if you're not aware of them. So I'll just do a quick run over of those. I guess this will be part 2. We have the new one kind of in there. When you're taking it out, there's the 2 main through bolts, one that's easy to get up at the top, one that's easy to get underneath. Then it can seem like maybe it's just kind of stuck in there. It's really easy to miss that there's another bolt down there. Obviously this one here is clean, so you can easily spot it. That guy there, it's a little bit of a bugger because it's really close to that AC line. You want to do it last, and you also want to put it in first. And when you go to put it in, you really want to make sure it's going in straight. You do it quite a few threads first with just a little hand tool to make sure that everything's hunky-dory. Definitely leave a lot of looseness there so you can wiggle around these other bolts, get those centered and started. But yeah, that one's last out, first in. The tensioner on these is a little bit of a pain. I don't know if I can show that well. Hopefully you guys can see that. So I just put a bar on there. It's part of a cheap serpentine tensioner tool, and it's got a hole in the end for a ratchet or whatever. I use a ratchet strap to pull it over and hold it, because what happens on that tensioner, if it releases all the way and it gets really far up there, it can be really unpleasant trying to pull it back down again. So I find it's easier just to get it jammed over like that and leave it until you're done. So the other couple things to note, the alternator is really easy to unbolt, but this connector on the EGR valve kind of gets in the way of pulling it out. So it looks like it's wide open, but it's kind of not. So what I do is I pull the 2 10mm bolts that go this way that mount the EGR valve to the head, and then I also pull out the 8mm bolts up here. I've never had them leak. You know, I just reuse the gaskets that are there. You obviously clean them up a bit. These bolts that go this way, I've also never had them break. They feel gross. They're just going into aluminum, but they do come out. Just use hand tools. Be careful with it. Give it a little bit of a bounce. Don't force it. Just allow it to come. Likewise, the bottom bolt is right against, the bottom bolt for the EGR is right against this alternator. So loosen that alternator, pull that off to the side first, then take both those bolts out, and then these bolts out, and then pull this kind of up and out of the way. Then once this is up and out of the way, then you can pull the old alternator out. And likewise with the new alternator, shove the new alternator down first, and then put up the EGR valve and the pipe. These bolts here, when they're going in, I've seen them lots of times. They'll want to go in cross-threaded if you're not paying attention. That aluminum piles up a little bit and you can be in for a bad day. It's super easy. I use a hand tool all the time, just a little itty-bitty ratchet, this little gearless guy right here. And I'll do a little bit there, 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 because this gasket here has the little tangs to hold the threads of the bolts. It's really easy for that to kind of go on an angle, especially if you've got the alternator in the way. So get the alternator out of the way, do a little bit back and forth, a little bit back and forth. Then once you got those a good amount in, and you know they're going in straight and they're not cross-threading, then start to put these in so you can locate this. I don't tighten these yet, but I put them down till there's a little bit of squish, and then I finish tightening these up and I tighten them the full amount. And then I'll go back and I'll do these guys. So yeah, I just got a message from the boss. Let me just quickly take care of that. He needs a part number. This part number. Okay. Probably don't need to see any of that junk. Okay, so I just got a message from the boss and had to respond to that while he's grabbing a part. So where was I? So these bolts here, they can cross thread so easily, they can pile up on that aluminum. So a little bit at a time, hand tools, until you get them most of the way, then tighten these most of the way so you can locate this, then go back, finish tightening those again with a hand tool, and then this one here, you can snug those up. These are just going in plastic, so they don't go very tight. Same thing here, these are just little 10 mils going into aluminum. So I use, you know, a 1/4 inch ratchet, and on the bottom 10 mils, you know, I'll give it a solid pull, good solid pressure, but I'm not yarding on it or anything. So then once you have this back in, then you can start dealing with that AC compressor. Really, at this point, really try and put that bottom bolt in there first. You know, pull the alternator up and out, thread the bolt through the hole, and then you can kind of put it in there. And it can be a bit of a pain, you know, you're jostling with the alternator, you're trying to get it to thread properly. It can want to kind of go on a bit of an angle, but really, again, use a hand tool. Make sure that's in quite a few threads so you know it's going in straight. For that guy there, I have this little guy here, works pretty good, little pass-through ratchet with the sockets. I get the normally this kit only goes up to 13 mil, but they do make extra ones. Let me grab that. They do make extra these sockets of a 14 mil and a 15 mil. These bolts are 15 mil for the alternator. So yeah, they cost extra money, but I use them a lot. So yeah, I'll use this, kind of go back and forth. It's pretty tight in there to get a good feel. When you're starting to get that bolt threaded, you're probably not having fun, but it's worth the hassle. You don't want to cross thread that. So likewise, get it to be about that tight, with that much room. Now you can grab, it might be a bit of glare there. Now you can grab the alternator, and you got that bit of wiggle, and let's see if I can do this one-handed. So the name of the game on anything like this, once you get fasteners that are going different directions, you definitely don't want to tighten any of them first before you get them all in. And not just all in, like not just a thread, but you want to make sure they're in a number of threads. I'm going to need a second hand for that, because you know, if you only have them in one thread or so, they can kind of pull out and they can pull on an angle. You get them in, you know, 5, 6 threads or so, then you do not have to worry about them going on an angle. And then yeah, you just tighten them all up, plug in all your connectors, all that sort of stuff. You know, be careful with the post here on the alternator. I've seen people break these. It's not in for a good day explaining that to a boss. And then the bonus with the tying the tensioner out of the way is it kind of holds the belt in place, because I don't know how well you can see, you probably won't be able to see, but way back there is a power steering pump, and if the belt comes off of that, it's not the end of the world, but it's kind of annoying juggling all that stuff. So with holding the tensioner in place, then it kind of keeps the belt in place. You can just sneak it up over this alternator when you're done, and then release the ratchet, and then you're basically done. Then of course, the last step, you obviously put up the terminal. Don't just rely on the light on the dash. Grab a multimeter and make sure it's charging.